So friends, welcome to this, our second seminar in Continuing Ministerial Development. And I'm just so grateful that you found your way here. Thank you for taking the time to register and be with us. Each one of these seminars has a specific theme and a purpose behind it. Sometimes they're going to be very practical, sometimes they'll be quite theoretical. And following on from our first one, which was in November, the recording of which is online. If you've not seen that, then please do send a message to me and I'll send you a link to that. Our second one today, we are just so delighted, utterly delighted to have Rich Blake-Lobb. Rich is pastor at Yiewsley Baptist Church, and which is great. And we're great that he's here as a pastor. But we found out about something else about Richard, which is he has this real artistic heart and an artistic capability. Indeed, was one of the curators of the arts stream in Greenbelt. And so when Rich offered to do a session for us on design, we were really thrilled at that. So Rich is going to be leading us in that, and we'll take a break at some stage, give you a chance to stretch your legs, grab a coffee and come back. Our aim is to finish at 12 o'clock. If we finish a little early, that's fine. We'll hope not to finish too late. And so Rich is going to guide us through the rest of this. Let's just pray, and then I'm going to hand over to Richard. Father, I want to thank you for drawing us here today. And Lord, we pray at the start of this day that you would inspire our hearts and our minds, that you would draw us closer to yourself, and that, Lord, you would move even in this space between us to draw us closer to each other and closer to you. Amen. Rich, over to you.
Wonderful. Well, morning. I was always told when you do a presentation not to start by apologizing for what might go wrong or anything like that. However, on this occasion, given that I don't normally work on a Monday and Tuesday, and had thought, right, that's great, because I'll set aside some time and I can really work on this presentation. We then went into homeschool mode. And so suddenly the 2 days that I thought I might be doing some preparation got eaten up with trying to work out what the school were actually trying to teach my children, what I was supposed to do. For a bit of background, yeah, I'm a pastor over in Yiewsley, which is, I mean, some people say it's not really London, it's just inside the M25. Yeah, at some point in my history went to art college and dabble around with things, and mostly have found myself at various points in all the churches that I've worked for prior to being a minister, as well as being a minister, and in the charities and other organizations, ended up doing posters for things and design. And when we were sat having a Zoom time with ministers at some point in about October, November, someone said, I'd love a session on how to make posters. And a few people piped up and went, actually, that would be great. And I went, well, I guess I could do one. So it's not that I'm, a graphic designer by trade that's come into ministry. I've picked up a few things along the way. And I'm not going to be doing anything today that is wildly complicated, or at least I hope it's not. This really is a session that is an introduction to designing. The people that were in the session when we were talking about it went, yeah, I mean, where do you start with designing a flyer or a poster? So I'm not using really complicated graphics programs, and you're not going to have to go out and spend a fortune and then run a tutorial. We're going to be using, because what I use generally, I normally use PowerPoint. That's my go-to, because it's really easy to manipulate and move stuff around. If you were hoping for something where you'd learn how to use some Paint Shop Pro or something like that, this isn't the session for you. This is really go into the basics. So I'm going to do my thing where I share a screen and hopefully press the right button. I think it's that one, isn't it? There we go. Hopefully on your screen, Jonathan will give me a nod and you can tell me that you can see something on there that says Introduction to Design. Brilliant. I normally use a different program for church, so I've just got to try and work my way through the joys of this. There we go. So what we're going to look at is context, concept, content, and composition. Being a Baptist, obviously I had to have everything begin with the same letter. And often, or there's a standard kind of designy thing that's often a triangle that talks about concept, content, and composition. But I think context is really important, and particularly for us, and we'll look at that in a minute. JPEGs and PNGs, what on earth are they, and why is that important? Thinking about the size that we do things, why you might do it in a particular size, and alongside size, the formatting that you might use for going on a website or social media, and why you might not go, well, I've done an A4 poster, so therefore I'll just put my A4 poster up on the Facebook page. There's, you know, that's where it gets fractionally more technical, but nothing to worry about. Just the use of things like fonts and colors, because you want it something to be readable. You want to be able to, it's got to be a clear message that you're trying to get across. And as somebody who is colorblind, I know that I always have to double check things with people. But I also have that thing. I'm the person who sits in church when something goes on the screen and I think, what on earth does that say? Why have they used that color combination? Because I can't see it. It's not something that stops me in too many ways, but it's just worth considering. How do other people view what you're doing? Yeah, and then using Microsoft Office and Paint.net. So I'm going to start with Microsoft Office and Paint.net. You probably know about Word and PowerPoint. That's my assumption, is you've heard of those. You've probably used one of them, if not both of them, at some point in your life. Whether you've used them well or not is not a problem. And maybe even from this, you'll go, well, I gained some skills for doing PowerPoint presentations as well. I'm going to focus mostly on using PowerPoint today. Word is quite similar. It's just the way that you can manipulate things on the screen is slightly different, because Word wants you to put things one after another unless you change things, whereas with PowerPoint, you can just move them wherever you want on the screen, which makes the whole thing really easy from my point of view. Paint.net, it's a free program. I've been using this for years. It does everything that I've ever thought that I could imagine I'd want to do. And so we're going to have a look at that in a little while. What I'm going to do, though, for this session is the first half is going to be more me talking at you and showing some slides. If I say something, you go, Rich, I've no idea what you're talking about. You can either do the technological thing and put your hand up, and Jonathan might notice that you've put your hand up, and he'll flag it up, or just unmute you and say talk or something, or just unmute yourself and say, Rich, what are you going on about? I'm hoping that I don't use any technical language, because I mostly don't know any. So there we go. Yeah, with Paint.net, it looks like this when you open it. That might be something that scares you if you're not used to using design programs, and you might think, whoa, that all looks a bit complicated. A lot of it is quite straightforward, and I'll talk through some of the basics of what you can do with it. But they're going to be the three things that we're looking at. If you use another program for anything, that's fine. A lot of this will translate across. You don't have to use it. This is just the one I've used. It's free, and what's not to like about free. So some theory to start with. Context, concept, content, and composition, the 4 C's of my design, at least. Context, I don't know what you're using, why you're interested in designing a flyer or a poster, but the likelihood is it's for some sort of event that you are running for the church, and there might be some activity. It might be something special has happened. You may just be doing one of those ones that you want to put on a notice board outside that says God loves you, or whatever the message is, and that's great. But probably you want to think about the context. So who's organising it? The church is organising it, or maybe the youth group's organising it, or a particular organisation within your church. Who is the desired audience? because I know there's things that are designed that I'm supposed to like because they're told it's for me. And I look at it and think, that looks like it's designed for somebody a lot younger than me, or that looks like it's for somebody a lot older than me. And I therefore don't necessarily read all the words that say, Rich, this is actually for you. So it's thinking about actually who do you want this to appeal to. It doesn't have to appeal to the person designing it. It needs to appeal to the people you want to come to it. But also, where's it going to be seen? Where are you going to put this poster? Is it just going up in your church building? Is it going to go in your local Costa, as we sometimes do, because they've got a community notice board? Is it going to get posted up on Facebook? Are you going to have flyers that go through doors? And will that make a difference to the way that you lay it out at all? Because you want it to be spotted. You don't just want to make a poster, stick it on the wall and hope people will see it. You want people to go, oh, that looks interesting. That catches my attention. So I've got a few that I've designed. Some of them are posters, some of the things I just pinched off a website. To give you an idea and just to look at them, and if I was in a session now where we were in a classroom, I'd probably say, tell me who you think this is aimed at. But that's probably a bit too complicated with Zoom, because you'll all chip in and we'll just have feedback coming in. So you can think for yourself whether these posters and designs appeal to you or whether they don't. Okay. So the first one from Christchurch, somewhere, Woking, I think it is. There we go. Meeting friends, enjoying God, living life better. It does tell me that it's Christchurch, Woking if I look really closely, and I can get a phone number. I don't know where their church is. I can't. There's no address, so that's a bit of a tricky one. But it's got a few of what they do. Maybe this will go outside of their building, so they don't need the address, but maybe that appeals to you. Maybe you look at it and think, it's a bit dated, or I'd love it if our church had something like that. The next one, Messy Church. You've probably mostly seen something looking like that. And you can probably work out who it's for and who it's aimed at. Join the youth group. I have definitely seen this sort of poster quite a lot. And probably if you showed it to a youth group or a bunch of young people, they're going to give you a sense of an idea of what that youth group is like. Is it the cool, trendy youth group, or is it the one that actually we know is in the church, but it's a bit kind of old-fashioned, which is okay, because it tells me I know what the place is like that I'm going to, which is quite different from this one. This one, I want it to be a professional-looking youth club, and it's going to have a very different feel from the previous one. That's just what the picture tells me. Fairly traditional Church of England one. It's going to appeal to a different group of people than the previous one. The more Pentecostal style black majority church kind of poster. This sort of poster, other than the fact that it looks like it is a ladies' ministry, so that's not going to appeal to me. But this sort of poster does not appeal to me in the slightest. However, if I want to encourage black people to come to my church, I need to consider what sort of imagery might actually appeal to them, for them to look at and go, that looks like it's for me, rather than what I would probably put, which would be more like that. Not quite, but you get the idea. It's a very different sort of approach. So it's thinking about who are we wanting to see our message so that we can attract them. And then final one, I just had to steal it from Jonathan's website, basically, from his church, because I knew he'd be here. And I can tell you that that's for children and families. And isn't it lovely? It's quite welcoming. Won't say that they're, spreading weeds or anything like that with the... There we go. So whole variety of different posters. I've literally Googled them and stolen them, and probably there's copyright infringement. Jonathan's shaking his head on his, that's fine. But they're in the public realm, and they are advertising something, and they are going to appeal to different people, and different people have designed them. And you will look at them and you will think, some of them appeal to me, some of them don't. Some of them I wish I could design like that, or if only we had someone in our church who could create that. Some of them you wish you will never see again, perhaps. Some are better than others, and that's fine. But what I want us to think about when we come to putting stuff together is not just, I like the look of this, but actually who is it that I'm trying to appeal to? Who is our church trying to appeal to? But also with that honesty of saying, who are we as a church? Because there's no point in putting up a poster, perhaps like the fancy youth group one, and making it sound or look like it's going to be like the best thing since sliced bread, when actually what we're really offering, which is perfectly fine and acceptable and lovely, is more actually the kind of clip art. Join the youth club, because people know what they're getting, and you want to marry expectations. So I have absolutely no problem with a black and white image on some coloured paper as being a poster, because that will appeal to certain people and actually is quite clear and stands out. And I know I've got an expectation of what I'm going to. What we produce doesn't need to be glossy, fancy, well produced. You want it to be clear for the people that it's for, and to represent you well. That's my views on things. Your church and different churches will have a really different view. Some churches, they want to be completely glossy. Everything's got to be just all tied into the particular brand, which can be useful. But I think we need to be honest about who we are and who we're reaching. So the concept then, what is the big idea? We want people to come to our youth group or to our Bible study, okay? Or perhaps there's some sort of message, or there's a theme. So we've just had Christmas, and we had Christmas poster. In fact, we used the same design for our Christmas poster. We have two. One's for our Christmas market that we run, and the other is for things that are Christmas, more like Christmas services, so the nativity, the carols. So one is the kind of fun event that's more outreachy, if you like, if we want to put a Christian spin on it at the market. The other is the things that are services, and they look quite distinct from each other. But then we're able to use the one that is for the Christmas services, and we'll have a poster that has all of our Christmas services on, but then we'll also use it to go, actually, here's a reminder, today is our nativity service, and we'll just put the nativity on it. So that theme will run through multiple posters. So we'll design one and then just change some of the text on it. So nativity on Sunday at 10 o'clock, and then carols by candlelight Sunday at 6:30, or whatever it might be. So you might have a design that just runs through a number of posters, and just gives you a theme, and people recognize it. And so I don't know how many people look at our church posters or things on Facebook and so on and so forth, but there's a certain continuity. And I was having a chat with my daughter yesterday whilst doing homeschooling, and I can't remember how it came up in conversation about the church, and I said, do you know the name of our church? And she said, she's 6, by the way, just to give some context. She said, no, it's just church. I was like, oh, okay. And then I showed her we were doing something for homeschooling. And so we went to the website of our church, and she went, that's our church, because she recognized the logo that we have that goes on. So she knew what it was. She recognized it and identified with it, because we have this that runs through everything that we do. She just didn't know at 6 years old that it wasn't called the church that Daddy runs, and so on and so forth. and that the church down the road is the one that Reverend Richard runs. She hasn't got a clue that it's called St Matthew's and it's an Anglican church. She doesn't need to, but she would recognise some of the imagery that comes from the two different places. So you might want to consider some of those things. I've just noticed some couple of people are writing things down. If you want a copy of these slides, happy to make them available. I'll send them over to Jonathan, and I guess he's got contact details for everyone and can send that out. And probably make them available on whatever platform, so people who come in the future on a recording might be able to get them too. The content, I don't know how many church websites you've visited or church posters you've seen where it forgets to tell you where it is. I have been on so many church websites and gone, where? Sounds great. You're inviting me to church at 10:30 on a Sunday morning in normal times. What's your address? And you have to really search for a website to find the address of the church. There's really obvious. I've made the mistakes on posters and gone, oh no, I've put in my home postcode or home address instead of the church address, because you're just typing and you don't think, and you get someone to check it and your wife checks it and they don't notice either, and then you print 500, get half of them distributed, and then someone says the church isn't there, that's your house. You go, oh flipping heck. Same with phone numbers and so on and so forth. But the obvious things that you're going to want on there are not hidden, like that one that I highlighted from Woking. You want it to be clear. You want to be able to go, what's the name of the event? It's the Christmas carol service. What is it? It's a carol service. Good. Who's organising it? Yiewsley Baptist Church. Where and when does it take place? It takes place at the church. Here's the address. It takes place on this date and at this time. Here's an info at Yiewsley email address. Here's our website. Here's a phone number. Whatever you want to use. You don't have to put them all in. You want to, but if you've got them and you don't mind numbers and things being publicized, then put it out there so people can find out about what you're doing. Are there any booking details? Do you have to book in to come to this thing? Is there a cost? I learned after we did a Christmas market, the first one we did, that people expected to pay to come in. And I was like, no, it's free. You come to the Christmas market and then you buy stuff, and that's the point. But apparently other Christmas markets people pay to go to, which I find a bit strange. So we then we learned for the following year, put free entry on it, and more people turned up, which was great. Sometimes people outside the church don't know that we do a lot of the stuff for free. So it's worth saying our parent and toddler group is free, or it costs 50p or whatever nominal charge you might have. So get that information out so that you're not going, well, I've designed a wonderful poster and I've got a really great image and I forgot all the really important details. So I've squeezed them in because I didn't want to ruin my design. Think about them as you're doing the design. Content, where are we up to? Composition. After you've put it all together, which we're going to do in a little while, does it look any good? Is the information clear and will it grab attention? And then you go back to the context and say, okay, well, I think it looks good. I think the information's clear, but now that I'm sticking it up on a notice board in Costa, it gets lost amongst everything else that's on that notice board because I've overcomplicated it. And I have that tendency because I like to play around with design. I will overcomplicate things and I always have to go back and simplify. You don't need to throw everything at it. I don't know if any of you ever watch MasterChef. I used to. I've got a bit bored of it because it seems to be the same every time now, which that's the nature of these sorts of programs. But often you'll get a chef that the judges are saying, oh, you're so close. And they kind of and ah, and they put them through to different rounds, but they're kind of on a knife edge and they keep saying, You're doing too much. You're putting too much into this dish. Cut back. You only need a few ingredients. And those that listen and take that on board, their cooking takes off and they are through to the finals. Those that don't listen don't make it quite as far because they're still trying to do too much. Design is one of those things where often less is more. And it's that thing of going, what are the really basic things I need? I need the information. I need it to be clear. I want it to stand out. And actually, sometimes to make it stand out, printing something on a piece of bright yellow paper with black writing is the thing that stands out the most, rather than a really well crafted with lovely images kind of design, because it's clear, it's bold, it's there. So you want to, when we look at these things, you'll want to look at the composition. How have you laid it out? Where's the title? Where's the information, the name, address, and contact information, so on and so forth. And you might even get to a point where you set yourself up a template that has the contact details of the church and other bits on there. And all you need to fill in then is the event name and the address and so on and so forth. And you might change some of the images around. Okay. Any questions on context, concept, content, and composition? Don't think it's rocket science. And what we're going to do after we do have a break, we're going to try and put something together. And if someone's got a poster that they're going, oh, I could really use one for, I don't know, what's coming up? Valentine's in February. Anyone do something with their church? Zoom Valentine's night. Lent. Whatever it might be, if you've got something that you think actually it would be great to have a go, then we'll have some fun designing something. So yeah, if there's no questions on those four things,
let's just give it a pause for a second for folks to respond, and just if they want to. So if you want to put your hand up, or as in not like on screen, but use the hand up icon if you can. If you can't, then please use then unmute yourself and ask a question. So just give you a second to do that. I don't know if you're monitoring the chat there, but there's a really great comment there from James, which might suit all of us, which is a poster for churches reopening after lockdown. I don't know if you can imagine what good design will be in 2025, but you know, then. Okay, Denise has a question. Thanks, Denise. Do you want to unmute yourself and then ask?
You might be covering this later, Rich, I don't know, but things that churches have been highlighted is about finding, particularly if we're doing it on social media or websites and things, free to use, royalty free to use images that are free as well as not just royalty free, but actually free when you've not got a lot of money, so you can't pay licenses and things. Have you got some suggestions for sources of those?
I do and I don't, because that was one of the bits that I've got on my notes to go royalty-free, free images, and didn't get to put my list together because I was homeschooling.
Maybe people in the room have got ideas.
I was going to ask what other people use, and yeah, Unsplash. There you go. Someone's jumped in already. The people will put them in the comments. I remember at some point, I have some recollection at some point that the Baptist Union might have put something on their website.
Yeah, they've got a Flickr account.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
Not just a Flickr account, but they have actually recently done an article about this. So worth having a quick look inside Faith and Society, probably, for an article about royalty-free images. But yes, if folks want to use the chat function and just share their best in there, I'll have a look and I'll add to that as well. But just use the chat and drop them in there. That'd be helpful. Thanks, Denise. Any other, if you just want to pop your hand down, Denise, that'd be great. I've done it for you. Anybody else?
It was Mike Lowe from the BU who posted a list of about 6, and it's on there.
Thanks. Was that Jane? I can't see who that was. Thanks,
Caroline.
Jane. Caroline, thank you. Bless you. Thanks.
There you go. If someone puts the link up in the chat, if someone's able to find it and put the link, we can then read it out, and those that are watching a recording will also have that information. I don't know how it works with the chat in the recordings. Presumably you don't get to see that people have put things like unsplash.com, pexels.com, Pixabay. Someone's also asked in the chat about, can QR codes solve the info problem? Yes, they can. For those who don't know what a QR code is, some of us are probably newer to them than others. You'll sometimes see, I think we've probably mostly, if you've not heard of them before, you might have seen them because of the test and trace scheme, and you'll see it on posters and around in different venues, that there's like a funny square with black and white pattern in it, and you can hold your mobile phone up to it. It will read the QR code, and it will take you to whatever it's set up to take you to. So it might be that it takes you to a website, it might take you to a ticketing site, and so on and so forth. You can set those up. I'm not going to go into details about how to set them up and how to create QR codes. That would be another session, but QR codes can help. But it's again thinking about the context of who is it that you're trying to appeal to, because I would suspect younger people will go QR code, cool, got it on my phone, whereas some of our more elderly folk, well, in my congregation, they don't even have a mobile phone, so the QR code isn't helpful for them. There you go. And someone's put up QR codes, easy to make and use, lots of sites. QR-code-generator.com. Thanks, Martin. Any more? Right, I'm going to continue. It's that one, isn't it? Okay, so PNGs and JPEGs. PNG, apparently it stands for Portable Graphics Format, and JPEG stands for Joint Photographic Experts Group. And if you come across JPG, it's basically the same as a JPEG, but at some point in Microsoft's history, you could only have endings that were 3 letters long instead of 4. So don't worry about that too much. They are different. And if you're thinking, what am I talking about? Well, the reason this is important for this context is a PNG allows you to have a transparent background and a JPEG doesn't. That's probably the most important thing that I would say about this. You can get different sizes and so on and so forth, but for the context of designing stuff, what's really helpful at this point is to go, oh, okay, I can do something with a transparent background. What I'm now going to try and do, he says, is no, I'll show you that when we have a practice session and go into a bit more of a practical bit in a little while. But basically, if you might sometimes have an image that you've got from whichever of the free sites you've got, or you've created your own and so on and so forth, and you're trying to put it on the screen somewhere or on your paper, and it's not just the drawing, but there's a white background to it, so it seems to cover up the letters, and so you feel you can only put it in certain places. That would be something like a JPEG. With a PNG, that white background disappears, so you can manipulate it, so just that little image is what you see, and so it can be quite useful for those sorts of things. And you can just save things in most programs as PNGs and JPEGs, so they're really common and quite straightforward. So when we come to a practical bit, I'll talk about those. Sizes. I don't know what size things you do, but you might do anything from A0 even. For A0's the really huge ones that you'd probably put on your outside your building. We've got a couple of big clip frames for posters that are, I think they're we've got an A0 one, we've got an A1. Inside we've got a couple of A2s. But probably most of us work in A4, A5. A4 is your standard printer paper, A5 half of that. Postcard is A6, so half of A5 again. What I have done as well is I've designed business cards. I've taken our flyer and our poster and I've just put it onto business cards because they're really cheap, and I use whatever printing company you decide to use. And having something that is, I'm going to find one now, that big and goes in my wallet. We did those for our Christmas market a couple of years ago, and we were able to just give them to loads of people. And people, rather than chucking them on the floor or whatever, actually they went in people's pockets, and people keep them in their wallets and so on and so forth. And so I've used them for a few other things. It might be for little prayer cards and stuff, but I found business cards quite a useful little size for portability, rather than going, oh, I've now got to carry this A4 poster home that I was given at church that I'm not sure what I'm going to do with because it's too big for my fridge. Think about, you know, where these things are going to go, and how people are going to use them. And what do you do when you're given a flyer for something? And be honest about it. I chuck loads of flyers in the bin, but yet I then make them. They work to a certain extent, obviously. But what about when it comes to going online? Well, there are loads of different sizes. Every single social media that you use has a different formatting size. And they have it different, not just for one part, but if you use Facebook, for example, you've got the header, and then you've got maybe your profile picture. But if you do an event, you might do an event picture, and then you can put a poster in it, and it's things that go in the news feed are better at a different size than that go in different places. They really like to mess you around. And just when you think you've got your head around it, they change those dimensions because they change their formatting slightly. So everything changes. So every year, the dimensions change slightly. And then you go from your laptop, which you've designed it on. It looks really good on your laptop. And then you look at your phone and you think, I can't see half the writing. Half the image has been cut off because of the way that Facebook works things to change from between different formats, from phone to tablet to laptop to PC, and whatever else we might use. Twitter uses different sizes again. Instagram uses different sizes. I don't know about Snapchat. I don't know how many of us are Snapchatting with our churches, or whatever other social media you have. I am not going to cover every single one of these sizes and dimensions. What I would say is, whatever you're using for church, if you've got a Facebook page, Google what the current sizes are. And you will come up with, millions of results of people telling you that they've worked it out and theirs is the best one. Go on to images, have a look at generally what people are saying and get an idea. The example I've given there probably isn't the best. You can find some that will show you, like it might be you'll get a rectangle that says header for a computer, and then the one that's for when it's on a mobile phone, which is narrower. And so you know that actually the design area you want to work in is one part of it. Although you might create something that's bigger, the stuff on the sides won't get seen in some formats. So we'll have a little look, if we have time, at an example of that and just how we might create something, and think about going, okay, I've done something for an A4 poster, but I also want to put something on Facebook. How much effort do you want to put in? How much time do you want to give it? It works well enough, but if you just want to get sharper at things, about how you put it on social media, which we're doing more and more naturally, then it's just thinking about those sorts of sizes and formattings. Fonts and colors. These are my rules that I use for myself. I don't know. I have a bit of a a love-hate for PowerPoints that different people have done. And one of the things that I probably enjoy for all the wrong reasons is people that aren't very good at PowerPoint and they've just learned how to use it. So they throw everything at it, and they've done everything in a different color, everything in a different font, everything with a different animation. And it comes up on the screen and it's just like, whoa, what is going on? I limit myself to a maximum of 3 colors, not including images, although sometimes I do from personal design preferences, try and even include it in images. But for the design that I'm doing, I try and go with a maximum of 3 colors. I'll often only use 2 because I want it to be really clear, really straightforward. I might then use different shades of a particular color. So I've gone, right, I'm using blue, and I'm going to use a couple of different blues. And then I'm also going to use green and orange. That would be probably quite a bad color combination. But I would try and keep the number of colors down because things become really hard to see. Again, same with fonts. I usually use 1 font. I might use 2, but I wouldn't go more than 3 fonts unless I was doing something specific that was designed around a number of fonts. So I've seen posters that are kind of, hello or welcome in multiple languages and things like that. And you might put that in different fonts because that's a particular design feature that you want to have. But for a general poster where you're saying, we've got a Bible study, we've got a special Easter service, you're invited, it's at this time, this place, probably I might do 2 fonts, and one would be the font for what the event is, so Bible study, Easter service, and all the other details I would put in a clear font. I don't mess around, other than maybe titles where you can play around and get different fonts because you want it to stand out to a different demographic. Generally, for everything else, all the information, I keep it to really clear fonts. So Arial, Times New Roman. I'm not a fan of Comic Sans, but other people are. There's a whole variety of others, but you want the font to be something that you can read, and you want the colors to be clear. And what things look like on your screen are not what it looks like when either you blow it up and put it on the projector in church, or when you print it out. And stuff that looks really good on your computer suddenly doesn't look so good when you print it. So don't just rely on your screen. I've got 2 screens because I'm fancy, which means that at the moment I can see you on one and I can see the PowerPoint slide on the other. And I can tell you that the colors are different on both. So one looks brighter than the other. So even from that, I know that I might go, oh, actually, I just need to change something because I thought something really stood out and actually it doesn't at all. I also consider, which I haven't put on here, is who's printing it and where's it being printed? Because if I'm sending something off to the printers and it's going to cost X amount of money, regardless of whether it's color or black and white, I'll go to town with having an image in the background and doing all that sort of stuff. If I'm printing it at home and want to limit things, I will really reduce the use of photos and things like that. I play around with line drawings and stuff, so it uses less ink. That's just an economy thing. Okay. Oh, and the one other thing on colors and fonts is considering the background. I try and keep my writing, I tend to, and this doesn't always happen, but I tend to keep where I've got writing that's important information off of images, or as I've done with this slide, I've done a really clear box so the writing's there, people can find it, and it's not lost against a picture where you're trying to read something and the first bit's fine, but as you get further down, actually you can't read it because the image that's been used, which is a wonderful image, actually detracts from the information you're trying to read. And you'll probably see that in songs that you watch on YouTube where people have put videos behind worship songs and then you're trying to sing the song along and the words all disappear. So it's none of that is rocket science. Hopefully it all makes a reasonable amount of sense and you've gone, yeah, I can see why you do that. But any questions?
Again, if you're able to use the hands up icon, then I'll see you and I'll be able to come to you, highlight you and unmute you, or get you to unmute yourself. So if you have a question on that, thanks Rich so far, really enjoying this, great stuff. Lots of good things happening in the chat as well. So we're not going to keep referring to that, the chat's there and we hope that you kind of look at it. So do just keep checking that. Thanks Carolyn for reposting the comment from the Baptist Union recently. So that's great. Thank you for that. Any questions on that? If you just want to use the reactions icon or the hands up icon just so that we can see you.
I'm just looking at the chat whilst you do that, and I'm going to pick up the that you said the Baptist Union one was in there. I can't see that for a minute, but someone's commented
Carolyn's just that comment about we're increasingly getting. Can you see that comment to everyone from Carolyn Irwin? Just scroll up by 4 or 5 comments, I think.
I couldn't find it on the BU website, but so that's copied from Facebook.
Yeah, they put it on the Facebook. Yeah,
the bottom things didn't copy, so I've just typed them in.
Yeah, that's great. So it's www.flickr.com and then freeimages.co.uk and rgbstock.com. And then there's also Pixabay, Unsplash and Free Pick that others have mentioned as well. But one of the other things that's been mentioned is different fonts, about the use of Comic Sans is used in schools because it's most easily accessible font for children with learning difficulties and the closest to what primary schools are being taught in terms of letter formation. There's also sans serif fonts are better for dyslexic. And you will find there is a whole host of debate about font usage if you really want to go into it and what is most accessible and which is most helpful. There is even someone designed a dyslexic friendly font, and so I think you can Google for that I've come across before, and it was tested with people with dyslexia, and apparently it's helps it to be easy to read. There's all sorts of things around color and being able to read. So black on white is apparently one of the worst for being able to read. And so if you've got additional needs, if you have dyslexia and so on and so forth, we always use white paper with black writing for just about everything. I've got a pile of things here that I've got to dish out at some point, and they're all black and white. I did used to work in an office for a local authority where everything was made cream paper because it meant that made it easier. You'd still print in black, but because it was on cream, it was easier to read. You can go into all of the things around accessibility, and some of that will mean that you go, my poster doesn't look as good as I wanted it to because I've been forced to use a font that I don't like and it looks a bit rubbish. You have to weigh that up, as we do with all things that we do. Is, who is it that we want to appeal to? Who are we trying to attract? How accessible do you want it to be? And you can go into details and find out information of which color combinations work for different people, and so on and so forth. And I'm pretty sure, as Sarah has pointed some of this out, and Craig, there might be conversations to be had within the Facebook group about actually how we use our fonts and colors about in terms of accessibility. There you go. There's even a debate that's popped up about why you don't use Comic Sans, because it doesn't form the letter T correctly. But there we go. So, and someone said British Dyslexia Association have a dyslexia-friendly style guide, so you can look at those. I'm assuming, because Jonathan hasn't moved to say that is there any questions?
No hands up. No hands up.
No hands up. Excellent. That's what I like. What I am going to suggest that we do now is that we take a break for 5 minutes, however long it takes to make a cup of coffee and use the little girls room. And when we come back, we'll put some of this into practice. Someone suggested a reopening the church after COVID poster, which is fine. I'm not going to do it all. This is where you're going to get involved and say, actually, what would we put on it? But really, it's not so much about what it's going to end up looking like. It's really to give you an idea about how we can play around with paint.net and PowerPoint and why I use those. Does that sound good?
That sounds perfect, friends. On my timer, it says it's 5 to 11 now. Why don't we come back at 5 past 11? We'll keep the call open, and we'll pause the recording. So if you want to get into heresy, now's the time to do it. Thank you for the first part of this, Richard. We really appreciate that. I'm going to pause the recording now. Well, welcome back, friends, and hopefully you've had a chance to grab a coffee or something. Just to explain a couple of things. This seminar has been organised by a Facebook group called Baptist Ministers in the UK, which a number of you are part of, but maybe not all of you. And if you are an accredited minister who is in pastoral ministry or in chaplaincy, if you are a newly accredited minister in one of those roles, or if you are a church-based minister in training, then that is a group that is available to you. And from within that group, which has 430 or so members, a number of us, in response to the Continuing Ministerial Development, wanted to provide these seminars to make sure that there was something free happening through the year that would be helpful to our colleagues in ministry. And that isn't limited to just members of that group. It's that group that are doing most of the organising of this bit, but we're opening that to all who are engaging with the Baptist Union's Continuing Ministerial Development scheme. So if you want to share this with others, then that's great. What we will be doing after this seminar is tidying up the video a little bit, just making sure that it works okay as a video, and we'll post that onto our YouTube stream. It won't be public, and so you will need to access a link. Hopefully I'll be able to email everybody with a link from this, and included in the comment section or the description underneath that, probably the comments rather than description, I'll include the links that we've shared to those picture sites and the font sites and other links that we've shared. So sometime, give us a few days, but sometime in the next week, then you should receive an email with a link to the video and also a link to those things. If you saw our advert in one of the groups, then hopefully we'll be able to share the video link in those groups as well. We probably won't share it in Baptist Collaboration. We'll share it in Baptist Ministers UK and Baptist Ministers Network UK. We'll probably share it in those two groups because we just want people with the link to be able to access it. Is that okay? Rich, back to you.
Okay, thank you. Just before I start, now that people have had coffee or whatever, if there's any questions that people have, quickly flag them up now before we go into our next half of the session. No, that's great. So, what I'm going to do, I think I'm just going to share my screen rather than the actual PowerPoint and see how that works, because I think that's going to be easier, because then I can move things across. So I don't know what version of PowerPoint you use. I don't know what version of PowerPoint I've got. They're all fairly similar, aren't they? But they change things along the way and whatever. I'm opening up a blank presentation. This is, if some of this you'll go, okay, Rich, this is PowerPoint for dummies. It might be. I'm doing this as though I'm doing it for my wife, who will, I don't say that in any negative way. She is not a fan of computers and not a fan of PowerPoint. And so if she's got to do one for her work, she'll often say, Rich, can you just quickly do this for me? When you open up a blank PowerPoint, it often comes up, usually comes up with click to add title, click to add subtitle, and so on and so forth. I click Control-A on my keyboard, which highlights it, and I delete them because I don't want them. Because I like to start from scratch. You can also go to, what is it, probably select all and things like that, depending on how you use it, or draw a box around and it will select them. There's keyboard shortcuts that I use, and one of them is you hold down Control, press A, and it does select all. I'm then going to go, because you've currently got this in a format that is great for a widescreen screen, or at least that's what mine comes up as normal. So I'm going to go to Design, and there's a little way on here where you can change the slide size. And the two standard ones for doing a presentation are standard, which is 4:3, or widescreen 16:9. They are not the standard for a piece of paper. You'll be surprised to learn that. So I simply go to custom slide size, and I'm going to change it to A4 paper, because I think A4 is fairly standard. We'll work with that for today. You can, of course, go to, this goes up, it goes as big as A3 on PowerPoint. And then you've got all sorts of other ones. So letter is one that is an American size. Others you can worry about if you want to. You can go to custom and just change it to whatever size you want. But given that probably most of our printers are A4 printers, A4 seems like a good size to use. So I'm using A4. You can obviously go portrait or landscape. For the sake of today, I'm going to choose portrait. Just got that feeling that I want to do a portrait poster. Do I want to maximize it or ensure fit? Do you know what? I've never really worked out what this actually does, because it makes no difference to my overall thing. So I'm going to choose maximize, because there we go. So it's changed it round. That is now roughly the equivalent of an A4 piece of paper. What PowerPoint does, though, it was always, if you were to print this, it adds a border. It'll add a white border around it. So unless you go to your printer settings and can print right to the edge of the page. So whatever you put on this piece of paper, there will be a white border around the outside when you print it. Now, mostly what you're going to want to do, because we're designing a poster, is ignore things like, I'm just going to move it down because there's a bit at the top of my screen. I don't know if you have it. Because I'm the co-host and I'm sharing my screen, it's got all these extra bits for sharing screen that are just getting in my way a little bit. So you have things that we're not going to use today, like transitions, because I don't need to transition a poster, and animations and slideshow. We can ignore all of that. Mostly we're going to insert. And probably the things that we're going to insert are, we might put a picture in. We could take a screenshot. I might have some photos on my computer. I tend to just get them using pictures. We might put a shape in, and so on and so forth. The ones that I tend to use for making a poster are a text box, a shape, and a picture. And given that we're doing a poster, I'm probably going to start with a text box. And thinking about what goes into my poster, I want to know, what is my event? I haven't decided that yet, but I do know that my particular event is going to take place at, I'm going to do it at my church because that's where I am and I can't spell it. That's not good on a video, is it? Yiewsley Baptist Church. There we go. We'll leave that for now. Now, the box I can manipulate around. And this is why I like PowerPoint rather than Word, because I can just put this anywhere on the page that I like. So for now, I'm going to drop it down the bottom. You may notice on my screen, and it might be different on yours, I think it's on view. I'm going to have to check this now. I have got ruler, grid lines, and guides. So you can have a blank piece of paper, but I like to have, which is under the view setting, the guides up because it shows me where the middle of the page is. The grid lines just give me something to work with. And the ruler, well, I just like the ruler. It's personal preference. So I find those really helpful because then I can say, okay, if I want to line things up, I want Yiewsley Baptist Church to be central on the page, or I know that I'm going to have everything that I do for the address is going to be lined up on this right-hand grid line. So I might go, okay, so it's going to be at Yiewsley Baptist Church. I'm going to have that in the middle. And I can change the font. It's on Calibri, not sure why. We can choose a font, and we've got all sorts of wonderful fonts. I've got more than you probably because I've added fonts to my collection. If people want to know where to go and find fonts and how to do that, I'm not covering it now, but we can look at, people can ask questions about how to download fonts and put them on your computer. That's fine. So you can go through and you can choose a font that you like the look of. I'm going to go really simple, and I'm just going to go with Arial. And I am going to make it bigger by pressing the Make It Bigger button. There's a little A with a Make It Bigger thing. And I think I want it in bold so people can see it. Now I've realised it doesn't quite fit because I made it too big. So I'm going to go slightly smaller. There we go. Yiewsley Baptist Church, right in the middle of the screen. I don't know if that's where it's going to end up or not, but that's where the thing is taking place. Now I could carry on writing here and say at, I don't know, 10:30 a.m. I could do that, and you're welcome to. What I tend to do is a new text box, because I can manipulate every single element that's on the screen. Because I want it to be the same font and the same size as I've already got there, I am going to copy and paste what I've done there. So I've got it. And the way I copied and pasted is I selected the word Yiewsley Baptist Church, and using a shortcut, I use Control on the keyboard and press C, which is copy. Control and V is paste. But you can also right click on the mouse. It's got copy and paste options. So now I've got another text box, and I can write in there that I want it. My event is taking place at 10:30 a.m. Sunday, some point in 2025, because that's when we're allowed back in our buildings. I don't know what date of the month it is yet, but we'll worry about that. You get the idea. So that gives me an idea. I can make it central, I can do the left and the right and all those sorts of things, but it gives you a bit of an idea. So we know where it is, we know when it is. It's going to be a worship service. I might put that in a different font. I don't know. Let's have a, don't know what I'm creating this poster for yet. Worship service. There we go. I've copied and pasted again. I want it central. It's going to go higher. But I think I'm going to change the font for that one. So I'm just going to scroll through fonts and see what works. Probably the Harry Potter one. I think that would be appreciated by some. Harry Potter, really kind of magical church service. Or can tell what my son was into and wanted for Christmas, based on the selection of fonts I have. I don't know. What does your worship service feel like? Is it going to be more of a is it more Tahoma with rounded edges? Is it more Times New Roman and kind of slightly more old-fashioned-y and traditional? You're going to work out what font seems to fit and suit what you're actually offering and what you do. If you're more traditional, then maybe a Times Roman or something of that ilk. Maybe you're doing something for children, so you're going to do you want to go down the Comic Sans route. I'm going to go with, I'm going to choose, Broadway, just for the sake of it. So it's a worship service and so on and so forth. Pretty easy so far. Feel like I might be teaching some of you to suck eggs and others of you going, oh, that's quite useful. Because we've got a whole broad range of people. Now, what happens, it looks a bit rubbish at the moment, I'll be honest, because it's just a white piece of paper with some words on it. It tells me some information that I want. It's fairly clear. And we could really, you could put the rest of the details in, saying it's the address of the church and a phone number. You could print that out on a piece of coloured paper and stick it up and people would notice it. They might not know what a worship service is. They might not know who's welcome there, but it would probably get some attention if it was on bright paper. But we want to put an image in. I think at least we want to put an image in. So we'll go to one of the suggested places. I can't see the chat because of the way this is set up for me. Let me see if I can find my PowerPoint. I'll reopen that PowerPoint because I copied some. Free images. There we go. These are the ones that you've all suggested. So let's choose one. Is it going to load for me? It is. And these apparently are beautiful free images and pictures. That's how it describes itself. We're doing worship. So let's type in worship and you get a whole variety of images there. You might go, oh yeah, one of these looks like my church. Maybe it doesn't. Some of you will think, you know, we've got different ideas of what worship is and what it looks like. Some of you, the hands in the air and the bright flashing lights, maybe that's your church. I suspect if that's your church, you've got someone in your church that does design already. It might be that it's more like actually having a picture of a Bible makes it clearer as to what it is. Just a couple of praying hands. We've typed in worship, so that's what we get. It might be better to type in. Wait, let me do it. There we go. Let's type in prayer because that might be more specific and look more like what we would expect it to look like in our church. I don't know. Maybe you resonate with some of those. I'm going to choose randomly, partly because of what I want to then do with the image. I'm going to choose this one. That's not the one I would choose for my church, I'll be honest with you. I'm choosing it for an example for what I want to do with it. So download for free, small, medium, large, or the original size. I can also do this way as well. Right click on the image and save image or copy image. For ease and simplicity at the moment, I'm simply going to copy image. And then I'm going to go back to my PowerPoint. And I am going to paste it in, which is Control V. And it covers up everything I've done, but it fills the screen. It's a nice image. It's going to use a lot of ink if I decide to print that at home. It's covered everything up, which is fine because all I'm going to do now, there's a button when you're on the Home tab, there's a button called Arrange. If these don't show up on your PowerPoint, there's a little tab at the end that means I've just lost it and you hide it. But you can then bring it back down on View or any of them and then click the paperclip. So go to Home, on the image, Arrange. I want the image at the back, so I'm going to send it to back. And now you can see the writing. Writing's lovely. Can't now see Yiewsley Baptist Church in the time because it's not quite in the right place. So I can left click and make a square around it all. And I can either use my mouse to move it around, or I can use my arrows and my cursor and I can manipulate it more slowly and more specifically to where I want it to be. So now that's slightly clearer. It's beginning to look like a reasonable poster. I think I actually want worship service to be bigger now that I've done that, so I can increase the size. And I'm playing around with my formatting and the composition and so on and so forth. I could, you know, put in the rest of the details, maybe a church logo, the website, and so on and so forth. We can play around and we can do that. My intention is not to do that now. Instead, because actually what I want, I don't want all this. I don't want the whole image. I want some of the image. And so I'm going to use my other program, which is paint.net. And I'm going to bring it onto the right screen so you can see it. Make sure I've got everything. if I make that full screen, is that clear enough for everyone? Hopefully it is.
Yeah, that's plenty clear enough, Rich. Thank you.
Brilliant. So it comes up, it always comes up in a standard size. You could design the whole poster using this program. The reason it becomes more complicated, I think, is on PowerPoint. When we were just on the PowerPoint then, we could move things up and down different in front of each other quite easily. We just go to arrange and you can move things forwards and backwards. If we use paint.net, you have to add in things called layers. And it just adds a layer of complication that I don't think this session needs to cover. So what I'm going to do, I've still got my image in my clipboard, so I'm going to paste it in. So edit, paste into new image. If I can press the button right, paste into new image. I get my lovely worshipy image there. Now I could write on this and create the post, like I say. What I want to do is actually, all I want really is this man. I don't want the cityscape and the sun. Is it sunrise or a sunset? I'm not sure. So there's a number of tools that I can use on this side. You've got a rectangle select, so I could cut him out and have just this portion of the image if I just wanted, if I didn't want to fill the whole screen, but I still wanted the cityscape, I could take that and then I could do Control-C to copy it, or I can go edit, copy, go back to my PowerPoint, get rid of the image that I don't want, which you just press delete, and I could just have that. So I've selected a part of it because I didn't want it all. You can do the same thing in a circle or an oval. When you're using this, if you want to get an exact circle or size, you press the shift button and it keeps it to a circle whilst you're manipulating it around. So I can go, right, I want cut out a circle and I want that particular part of it. And again, I could copy and paste. Once I've drawn a circle, if I've not got it in quite the right place, just go a bit on the edge. If I've not got it in quite the right place, I can click on, there's a little white arrow at the top of the, near the top of the screen, and that moves where the circle is without moving any of the rest of the image. And then I can change the size of this. Go, right, look, I've got a lovely picture now. Copy, find the right button on my screen. Don't want that one, I'm going to do a circle. And isn't that lovely? See, just changes it the way you've done it, and so on and so forth. I want to be slightly more manipulative though. The other one, so I could just use, there's like a lasso picture. It's called a lasso as well. Excellent. And I can draw around here roughly, and I might get that, get this funny shape. So I mostly get him rough and ready. So that's what I've selected. Go back to my PowerPoint. And I just get that. But that looks pretty rubbish because I've not done it. I've done it very rough. There's a very clever tool, which is a magic wand, which is why I thought about my Harry Potter font. And I can click on different area and it will select things that it sees as roughly the same color. Now you might look at it and go, that doesn't all look the same color, or it's missing some of that man, and you'd be right. I can adjust the tolerance. So if I move it down, it will select less and less and less. So if I move it up, it will select more and more and more. By selecting more, I can gradually cut out this man if I want to. So I'm going to just change my tolerance slightly. I think I'll go to there. And I press the, oh, no, press the wrong one. Got rid of the wrong bit. It's good, isn't it? It's going to cut his head off. So I'm just going to move it, make it slightly smaller. And I press the delete button. And I've started to get rid of the cityscape around him and the sun, so on and so forth. by clicking on the colors of the bits that I don't want in a bit more detail. I'm just going around it, and so I don't have to be accurate. I'll change the tolerance, press delete. Oh, that one's going to pick up a lot. I don't want it to get all of that. Change the tolerance at the top. And gradually we get this man. There's probably easier ways of finding a picture of a man, just for your interest. I'm just doing this simply as a way of doing an illustration of trying to get the bit I want. I'm not going to be exact. You can go into as much detail as you might like. That then, if I now make the tolerance reasonable size, there we go. I've mostly got the man. I'm going to copy him and I'm going to paste him into a new image. So I've now got much less to work with. I can look at it bigger. You can zoom in and out. There's a magnifying glass one there that you can use. So you can zoom in and out using the different buttons on your mouse. I've accidentally cut his head off. For now, I'm not going to worry. I could go back. Don't know what you can see. If I go there, you can go back to the picture that you had. There's images at the top that show you what you've got, so you're not losing anything. So I could go back and just get it in a bit more detail. But I've got it as close as I'm going to for the sake of this example. I've then got a rubber, and I've got a few details here that I don't want. So I'm just going to make that a bit bigger so my rubber's nice size. Go into the brush width, and I'm going to rub out that little line there. I'm going to rub out this little bit here. There we go. I've pretty much got a figure. And then I'm going to use the square just to get rid of, in bulk, some of these bigger bits, because I don't want any of this. Cutting it all off. Because what I want is mostly, there we go, we're getting quite close now. I'm going to use that as my image. Okay. I don't want to lose that in case I want to come back to it for another time. So I'm going to save it. I've got two options. I'm just going to move it slightly. I don't need to, but there we go. I've got two options, or I've got multiple options of how I save it. I could save this as a JPEG. If I save this as a JPEG, so save as, I'll put it on my desktop for now so I can find it. Okay, so I'm going to call it image 1 because I'm feeling original today. And I'm saving that. That is saved. I've got all sorts of options. PNG, JPEG, MBP, TIFF, GIF, so on and so forth. You ignore most of them because you just don't need them. I'm going to save this one to start with. I'm going to save it as a PNG. In fact, if I call it image PNG, you'll see what I mean, why that's important. And then I'm going to save it again. And I'll save it as JPEG. And it's going to ask me, do I want to keep what quality do I want? Or I'm happy for it to be 100%, that's fine. And it saves it. Now, I'm going to go back to my PowerPoint. I could just copy and paste from here, but just go back to my PowerPoint. We'll go Insert, Picture. There's a little down arrow from this device or online picture. Well, I've got it from my device, so I'm going to go to my device, desktop, and I called it image JPEG and image PNG. I'm going to put the JPEG in first. So if I put the JPEG in, can you see what has happened? I've got the image, but I've got this white border all around it. So the page that I had in my in Paint, all of these grey and white pixels have become part of the picture. And so they cover up the writing in a way that is not helpful. I could move it to the back and I can manipulate it in different ways and that would be fine. Or if I insert a PNG, this is where the importance of these two comes into play. If I come into the PNG, the icon for it looks really weird now because it's given it a black background. Ignore the fact that it looks funny and insert it. And it doesn't have the white box. So it now can move and I can put it quite close to the writing and it doesn't cover things up. So when I'm manipulating, if you've got a few images that you want together, having PNGs means that you don't have the white that covers it over. So I can now put the image of my man worshipping. I quite like it at the top above worship service. Or I'm going to select it all and move it down. He now looks like he's going for a hug, doesn't he?
Rich, I just wonder if,
Yep.
You may be planning to do this anyway. Can you just change the background on that slide there to like a yellow and then
Yep.
show the difference between the two images? Because I think that'll be clearer why we need to do this as opposed to the other. Because some people might think, well, I'll just send that image to the back and layer the text on top of it.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
if there was a contrasting background, then they'll be able to see the difference as well.
Yeah, absolutely. You can just change the background, which is format background. You'd probably do that somewhere else. I keep doing shortcuts. So I did that by pressing right click and you get a menu and you get format background. It's probably on design, is it? Yeah, format background. There we go. Comes up with the same thing. You get options here. So you can do the background. We'll just do a solid color for now and we'll make it this lovely yellow. Ooh, there we go. And what I'll do is I'll insert the JPEG as well. And you'll see the difference between the PNG and the JPEG. Thanks, Jonathan. Now I've got a big white box because it's a JPEG and it's given it a white background versus having the PNG, which gives it transparent so you can then manipulate it around. You can see the background. Thanks, Jonathan. That's helpful.
Thanks, Richard. I appreciate that. It's just I was keen with the white background people to see that difference that way.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah. And it also means, let's say, I'm gonna copy and paste this image because I decided I wanted it twice. I can then have multiple worshippers in this case, or the impression of some sort of bird or something, and we've one slightly smaller than the other. I don't know. But you can play around with that image then and layer it. Whereas if it was if you do it with the JPEG, obviously you have another one, you're covering it over. Yeah, I probably wouldn't use a yellow background very often, but there we go. I might often, so the other thing I'd put in is a shape. If you've got an image like that first image that we had, that was, I go back to it. Well, let's just choose it. I'm going to choose a more elaborate image just to show something else. If I can find got all these tabs going on, it's confusing me. Let's just choose. I'm going to choose this one. Of this woman, whoever she is, and we're going to go back to PowerPoint. I'm going to put that in PowerPoint. I'm going to send it to the back. Home, arrange, send to back. And whatever color I choose for my font, because if I go, that's the image that I really want, ignore how terrible my poster might look at the moment. If that's the image that I really want to use because it sums up what I'm doing, whatever I change this writing to, so I've selected it all because I use the mouse to select all the writing. I then go, well, white will work better. No, white doesn't quite work. What about, will yellow work? No, there's still bits of it that are really hard to read. This is a pain. What you can do is, so what I might do is insert a shape. And I would insert, personally, either a square, or I quite often like the rectangle with rounded corners. It's just a preference that I have, and that's fine. You'll find your own. You might like triangles or arrows or whatever. You can get any of these shapes. I'm going to use the one with rounded corners because I like it, and I'm going to put it over the text for now. So I know that it covers the text, and I can change what fill color it is. So actually, I'm going to make it white. I know I don't want an outline, or maybe I do. At this point I don't, but you can change the outline and say no outline, or give it a color. You can have it dotted or dashed. You can have it thicker or thinner. I don't want an outline for what I'm doing. You can adjust if you want to. You can go to shape effects. These are things that I would just say play with. Get on PowerPoint and enjoy playing around and going, oh, I didn't know I could do these things. But there's these different effects that you can use. You can put a shadow on it, or a reflection, and see how it looks. I'm going to put a shadow on because I can, and I want the shadow to be on the bottom right. So I've put a little shadow on it. Not that you can see it because of the colors, but there we go. Now I can send it backwards. So I've got options now. Instead of sending it right to the back, if I send it to the back, it will go behind the picture. But if I send it backwards, the writing will start to appear. So I've now got my writing, which because I left it in yellow is impossible to read. So I can change the font again by going to Home, by choosing a font color. She's wearing red, so I might choose red. But I've also got in mine option, you can go to more colors, which will give you any color you can think of there. Or you can go to eyedropper. And using the eyedropper, I go to somewhere on my picture and I'm going to choose her red dress that she's wearing and bring out the color of that dress. So it's now there. I realize I'm still covering her head up, so I can move these slightly. To get them up, and I can change my box size and bring that up so we're not completely covering our head. And I could leave it like that because it's close enough. Obviously, I'd fill the page if I was doing a full poster and not trying to aim for finishing by 12 o'clock. The final thing, though, that I might do on this one is if I click on the box that I've made white, depending on how you've got this set up, I've got it so that these boxes come up on the side automatically, so format shape. You'll see that it changes on the side when I click on the photo to format picture. But I want to change this one. This box that I've made white, I can change the transparency. And if I change the transparency, the picture behind starts to show through, but I can still see the writing. Now, this looks good on a screen, and that's where I would go. I'm going to print off a copy to find out how this has worked, because sometimes this is a point where you think it looks okay on the screen, you print it, and then suddenly you can't read it. So you can go more transparent or less transparent, but somewhere around kind of between 30 and 40%, you're probably all right for what would be clear. And so therefore, you've now, the image carries on through, which just adds a little bit of, oh, look how professional I am. And if this were to fill the whole screen, which we'll just manipulate to do, there we go. Now, I've made that picture bigger than the piece of paper, which is probably worth mentioning. You can see the grid lines underneath still on the one I do. Everything that's off the page won't get printed. It's like if you put it onto a PowerPoint and projected it, you wouldn't be able to see that. So File, if I go to print, it does come up with a preview. And you can see what I was saying about you'll get this white border. So whatever you do, you'll end up with a white border around it. So you're not working quite to the edge of the page. One final thing I'm going to say before I say any questions is if I only wanted this to be a A5 rather than A4, I would still design it in A4, and I would do it just like this. I will then click on my slide that I've got up at the sidebar here. I will copy it. Is that paste? Yeah, I'll copy it. So I've got 2 pages of it. They're exactly the same. And then when I go to print, I know that I can do file print, and I can do 2 slides per page, or your printer might look slightly different. No, cancel that. I know that I can go in my printer settings. This you might have to work out for yourself. Pages per sheet, 2, and then hopefully, yeah. So it won't show me, but when I print that, you'll then have, it will print next to each other on the page. So I'll automatically get 2, and then I've just got to slice them in half, rather than trying to feed A5 paper into my printer and work out that. I'm gonna stop there, because I feel I've just thrown a whole bunch of technically bits at you, and you've gone either, okay, that makes sense, or wow, that was really quick. I'm not that quick at using PowerPoint, and that new program that Rich just showed, he whizzed through it. So I'm gonna hand over to you. I'm gonna stop sharing and hand over to you.
Thank you, Rich. That was brilliant. And when people get to look at the video, they'll be able to kind of slow down some of that stuff and pause and just try themselves as well. So I want to encourage people to do that when the video is available. I don't know if you've done this, Richard, I'm sure you have, just on that poster where you had that white box and then you dealt with the transparency. Something I've done from time to time is I've used the eyedropper for that fill, and I've picked up a color from elsewhere within the picture and then alter the transparency so that instead of having the kind of stark whiteness of a box, it's been a gentler kind of a gentler thing. So great responses here, people realizing just how powerful PowerPoint is, which is great, isn't it? That's lovely, which is exactly what you wanted to do. Friends, if you have questions now, can I invite you not just to all unmute at once, but to capture our attention by using the reactions, lifting up the hand in the reactions, and we'll come to you for questions now. So if you have them, that would be great. And then we'll come to you. I'll be able to highlight you and people can see. So I'm going to come to Tracy first. Tracy, if you want to unmute yourself, that would be great. And then...
Sorry, I might have missed it right at the beginning. How do you put the guidelines on behind the whole of the PowerPoint? And thank you so much, by the way. Thank you.
No, not at all. Okay, I'll share my screen again so I can get it up and show you. It was, if I just put it on screen too, isn't it? That's it. There we go. In the options at the top with home and insert and design and so on, I'm just going to get I'm going to insert a new slide so that it's, whatever. It's just easier to see, isn't it then? You've got one that is view.
Yeah. And
on view, you've got ruler, grid lines and guides. And so you can keep on whatever ones you want, because sometimes you will find you move a guideline when you're trying to pick something up. You're like, oh, my guidelines blinking moved. What have I done there? They're not, you might not need those. And you'll work that out. So you can just take the guides off and have the grid lines. I just have them all on personally. And again, the layout I'm using, so I'm using normal layout rather than any of the others that you can put PowerPoint in. The other options, you get a smaller thing, but normal layout means that you get these smaller images of your slides down the sides, the ones you've done. You can adjust the size of that as you need to. I don't think
Okay, and will that be on every version of PowerPoint? Because I haven't got any of those on my PowerPoint.
It will be somewhere. You probably, obviously I can't work on what version you've got. It's been on there since I started using PowerPoint in about 1998. So they will be there somewhere. It's just where on your version of PowerPoint you find them, and they change it slightly. If you've got at the top, or if you've got somewhere that says view, there should be. That would be my guess as to where it is. The other is
got guides, but I'll have a look. I know where to start looking.
Yeah, there might be like on here. You get a little drop down things. There might be a drop down arrow or something that gives you the others. But the thing that I do when I don't know on these sorts of things is I literally go PowerPoint. I don't know what we're in 2000. It'll be a 2010 version of PowerPoint, whatever you've got. How do I put in guidelines? And someone will have written about it.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
I still do that, even though I've been using PowerPoint forever and it's my go-to tool for just about everything. So, yeah.
Thank you. David had a question, I think. So, David.
Yeah, so it comes from that. Just out of curiosity, why is PowerPoint your go-to tool, not Microsoft Publisher or another desktop publishing tool that's designed for designing posters?
That goes back about 20 years. And when I first was doing this, I was traveling and I was doing a bunch of mission stuff and at different churches in different places. And the one program that the program that everyone had and I could find everywhere was Microsoft. And if you used Apple, they didn't always talk to each other. But if you created something in PowerPoint, I could make it talk to other things. And so I just got used to using it. And I've used Publisher. That didn't always come with every package of Office. So it's sometimes something that you only get in like a more professional package rather than your home or student one, which depend on what you use. But it also, I find it manipulates things in such minutiae of detail sometimes. Like you want to move something across a screen, and I use the arrow keys a lot. I just find PowerPoint just does what I want it to do. And because people are used to using it as well for church things, it's one that I'm used to, and others that I've then shown things with go, oh yeah, I've used PowerPoint, whereas Publisher has made them go, oh, I've not used this before. It's another new aspect of it. No,
Thank you.
No other major reason.
Thanks for that, David. Just before I come to you in a moment, Denise, there's a question in the chat, which is if you're going to share that PowerPoint slide, then what format would you save it in for sharing?
Oh, good question. I'm glad that was asked. So you can obviously save it files. Am I on? I'm not shared screen.
You're not sharing at the moment. No.
I'll share my screen again. Go to that one. So I can just share. I can save it as a PowerPoint, but at least in this version of PowerPoint that I'm in, I can go to save as, and we'll choose browse. I'm going to go to the desktop because that's easy and I'll find it to delete it later and I don't need it. Automatically wants to save it as a PowerPoint presentation. If you click on PowerPoint presentation, in this version, it's got a whole host of different things you can save it as that none of us ever look at. So as it's an image, I might save it as a JPEG. I might save it as a PNG if I want to use it. If I was going to use that then and maybe wanted to open it in paint.net and manipulate it, I don't know, I might do that. If I'm going to use this image online, I would save it as a JPEG or a PNG. If I'm going to send it to people via email, I'm going to save it as a PDF because it tends to be that people, whatever device they're on, their computer will open up a PDF very easily. And when you choose to do it in a JPEG, for example, what should we call it? Poster JPEG. And I do tend to write on what I've saved it as in the format in my title, because then I know which one I want to send to people. If I click save now, it will say, do you want to save all slides to export as a JPEG or just this one? Obviously, you don't need to send, you don't need to save, if you've copied your slide so you can print it as an A5, you don't necessarily want to save all versions of it. You just need one. So I'm just going to save one, just this one. It's done it, hopefully. I will go and find it on my desktop somewhere. If I can get to my desktop with everything I've got open, and open it up, and it's going to come on my other screen. Of course it is. So I will bring it across to your screen, and there it is, saved as a JPEG. And then that can be used that can be used on Facebook, website, whatever it might be. And the one thing I haven't done, I realized, is cover the kind of online different sizes and things. I would say that what I would do for those is in paint.net, I would find out what size I need it to be. So I would create a new, I'd ask to create a new file. It's going to ask me what size do I want it. Online, it will say, if you look at the guides and say how big, it will say in pixels, not centimeters. And so you can look for what the relevant pixels are. So I'm just going to use the one that's there because I don't need to worry too much. It will then create one, a new image with a pixel. It's given me a background. If I want that to be clear, I'm going to delete it. But and then if I'm saving it for, so if I would then put my image in there, whatever it is, and I might have to manipulate things using, see if I can open. Got my image, didn't I? Where is it? There. Got my lovely poster that's been created. That is not going to work for the size that it might need to be for Facebook. You might be using something much narrower, and so you'd have to think about how you would manipulate that using either PowerPoint or this. I haven't got time to cover that now, but I would be happy to, if anyone wants to have an extra session, I'm more than happy to do another session at some point to pick up on a kind of, I've now had a play, can you teach me how to do this type stuff? Yeah, that was a long answer to saving it, wasn't it? Sorry.
No, but that's fine. No, you got it. Thank you. Appreciate that. And so saving in different formats for different things. If it's an image you want to save somewhere, save as a JPEG. If you do have a number of files that with different images on them, you've been working together, you can save the whole lot as JPEGs and it will create a folder. And inside that folder will be a bunch of individual JPEG images. So you can do that way as well. If you've got more than one slide and they're different images, then you can save them that way. Denise, coming to you.
Won't let me unmute there. Wouldn't let me unmute myself, sorry. Just a quick question. I might not be able to ask it, I don't know, but if you've designed your wonderful poster or your flyer or your business card or your postcard and you want to get it printed and you don't want to use up all your own personal ink, and the church doesn't have a printer, what are your go-to printing sites? I know Vistaprint was quite good, but they've got a delay on because of where they're getting it from because of supply at the moment. Have other people got other good go-to mass printing sites that they use?
Jonathan's posted Solo Press in the comments. I would suggest if people have got printers that they use, put them in the comments. What we happen to lease out an office space in our church building to somebody who is a printers, which is slightly useful. We do get a discount occasionally, but they only go up to, they do mostly mugs and kind of memorabilia and t-shirts and stuff, but they can go up to, I think they can go A3, A2 possibly, but they can't do the really big ones. But yeah, if we're getting something, but I've used Vistaprint. And a little sneaky tip with Vistaprint as well, if you've got your poster designed in advance and you get it loaded up onto Vistaprint, leave it there for a few days and they'll send you an email with a discount offer. Just wait until there's a discount that you like and then print them, because I don't usually do anything if I don't get somewhere between 30 and 50% off at Vistaprint, because they're always doing deals.
They've just got a delay when you go on their website. They're not actually promising speedy turnarounds at the moment. So.
No.
But Solar Press I haven't heard of, so that's useful.
Solar Press, really excellent. Yeah, we've done lots of stuff with them. Yeah. Any other questions before? I'm mindful that we're rushing towards 12. Last chance for a question. Let me see that.
One comment on saving. Save your PowerPoint as a PowerPoint as well. Yeah. Save it as a PowerPoint as well, because when you go, oh, we're doing our worship service again next month or next year or whatever, you can open up the PowerPoint and change just the text that you need to change, like the date and time, and then save that one for the new one as a new JPEG. Whereas if you save the image as a JPEG only, you've got to kind of start again. So you've then got a template to work with. So especially if you've done something where you set up a template on PowerPoint that's got your church address in the place you're likely to keep it, in the layout you want, and so on and so forth, you can just open that up and add to it rather than having to recreate the wheel every single time.
Thank you. This is, oh, hang on. Something weird happened with my view there. Great. That's really helpful when you move churches too. That's really sneaky. You just I like that. I like that. Okay, well, friends, thank you so much for being with us. It's been great to be with you. Next month's seminar is going to be looking at Zoom, and we've got a little bit more time online ministry and church. So we're going to be looking at Zoom. One of the things we're specifically going to be looking at is things that we add into Zoom. So how do we incorporate other elements into Zoom? So going beyond this and thinking about some of the tech and some of the softwares that we might use to enhance what's happening in Zoom. We're going to be looking at that. I'm going to be taking that seminar. David Fleming has very teasingly and is mocking me, really. He's calling it a masterclass. So in the advertising, it's being called a masterclass, but that's just as he's winding me up. That's all that's happening there. But we'll be spending time together looking at making the most of Zoom as much as we can and having that as an enriching thing. Friends, this will be available soon. So do keep an eye out. We'll try and email it. We'll certainly be sharing the link in Baptist Ministers in the UK Facebook group and Baptist Ministers Network UK Facebook group. So do watch out there for a link in case it doesn't appear in your email. And it may be that my email appears in your spam, because obviously we'll be sending out a lot of emails from this. Richard, thank you so much for today. It's been excellent. And yes, you fitted so much in that time, but it was a really, really empowering and equipping whistle-stop tour of some of those software and some of the kind of concepts behind it. Lots to talk about. And so it may well be that we continue some of this conversation in the groups. Feel free to do that. You'll find the advert for this, and it could be that you want to continue the conversation in the advert for this inside the groups. If you're not in those groups, then please do email me or one of the other admins. That would be great. Just take a moment to note that Richard has kindly shared his email address with us there if you have any questions about that technology. Richard, it may well be a great thing in a little while's time, in a month or two, when folks have had a chance to play around with some of this stuff, to then have another online Q&A around some of this, because it was really, really excellent today. So thank you so very, very much. Pleasure. Can I just pray and then we'll close this out?
Before you pray, Jonathan,
can
I just jump in and say genuinely to folk, if you have got questions or you have a go at something and you're thinking, Rich did something, it looked really easy and I can't find the button, or I want to try something and I don't know what he's talking about, I'm more than happy to answer questions. And if we need to do a Zoom and you share your screen and I'll go, oh, I see which version of PowerPoint you're using, yeah, it'll be there, or any of those sorts of things, don't be afraid to ask. I'm currently on rich@yiewsleybaptistchurch.com, so yeah, get in touch.
Thank you. That's really generous and we really appreciate it. And you've been a really excellent facilitator today. So thank you so much. It's been really excellent. And Father, we pray that you'd watch over us and help us to communicate well who we are, what we're doing, in a way that will draw people in and will clearly share the good things that are happening. And Lord, we want to pray for Rich, and we thank you for him, pray a blessing on him. And as he continues to share his expertise with others, we ask that you would give him a great blessing, we pray, in Jesus' name. Amen. I'm just going to shut the recording.